Good to see you again. I'd like to make an observation first, then I'll have a question. First, we talked at the luncheon a few months ago, and one of the things, I've been on this committee 3 years, and I've noticed that every time we'd have a new person come in, we'd ask them these questions, and they'd say, we're looking into that, we're working on that, we're going to do a study on that, and 3, 4, 5 months later we come back, and sometimes there was a new person who said, I just got on the job, and we're looking into that, we're going to study that, I wasn't there then. So I wish you a long tenure, and I also say in 4 and 5 months, I hope you can show us the progress that we've made in there. My question would be, now that you're new at the job, what are a couple of things that you walked in the door, you start peeling stuff apart, and have really shocked you and said, we've got to do this right away, either in the fraud mitigation, I think you mentioned that in your testimony, some of the waste and fraud mitigation efforts you've made. And then I'd like to ask Mr. Scheer the same thing when she's done. If you had her job, what would you say, this is something we have to start right now, get done, that you would implement on day one from your observation of being in the agency? So, Ms. Mills, if you'll go first, and then Mr. Scheer.
Absolutely. I'm looking back to just make sure I read the same words to you in my opening statement, because I am on record with the following, which is that many of the problems that have been built up over years, and that they're not going to be solved in a matter of days or weeks, but they will indeed be solved. We have a top management risk-based approach to addressing these issues. They are all on our radar. We track every single GAO report and IG recommendation. We work our way through them. We either agree with them and execute them, or we have further discussion as to how we should move forward with them. Because we cannot run an agency that is so critical to the economy going forward, with our $90 billion loan portfolio, with being responsible for 23% of government contracts going to small business, with being responsible for disasters, which could be catastrophic. We can't execute unless we execute without, at the highest levels of effectiveness and transparency. So that's the commitment. We are working on that. I would have to say that these. What I have found, actually, on the flip side, is that we have great people. We have a great team, and we have great bone structure. And the secret that I have found is that our bone structure is our people and also our partners. We have over 4,000 lending partners. We have over 14,000 counselors in our SPDCs and our SCORES and our women business centers. We have a network throughout this whole country where we touch businesses. We are within, one person told me, an hour to 40 minutes of most businesses with a counselor. So we have an important and critical role to play. We are breaking down silos, and that also helps with this waste, fraud, and abuse, because it can't live in this open, transparent environment. And we are working together to bring the power of that entire network to small businesses in order to bring the economy out of the recession and give it strength and make it competitive going forward.
Mr. Scheer, if you were in charge, what's the number one thing you'd tackle? And it may be on the same line.
I'll make one flippant remark, which is we're not supposed to make management decisions. But so let me just make some observations, if you could live with observations. As an accountability organization, when we see what I'll call a complete lack of internal control and fraud prevention in a program like the HubZone program, we just say, some people might say, well, the HubZone program isn't that important, but whenever we look at anything in government dealing with HubZone or contracting programs, that's something that is always going to be, as an audit agency, something that we think is very important to address, and address aggressively for our programs, for these programs to work. With respect to the capital access programs, this, I will make a statement just because it's such a big part of what SBA does. And there's such even a more important part now that we have the credit crisis that faces us. Over the years, among the things we have recommended is that in running its programs where SBA is delegating authority to lenders, and there is so compliance-oriented, and compliance is good, but you don't get into questions as far as how are those lenders using the authority we're granting to them? Are they meeting the intent of the program? So as we go forward, for example, now in looking at the Recovery Act, we just say, can SBA kind of step back and become more evaluative in the way they manage their capital access programs, so you can help figure out how to implement different provisions that are to meet an intent in the credit markets where you're relying on private lenders to carry out certain authorities. So that would be the second area. The third area I'd point out, the third part that I would point out, as an audit agency, we don't make recommendations to either to increase or decrease any agency's budget. I mean, we're just not in that business. It's a congressional prerogative. But with SBA over the last few years, at a minimum, we always are asking the question in your entrepreneurial development programs like women's business centers, in running various programs, including the contracting programs, including 8A, do you have the resources in place? So what we tend to look for is some type of strategic planning. What do you need to get the job done? So those are the three areas I'd point out.